everyone, welcome to Fidelis. Merry Christmas. It is finally here and the season still lasts for a while. So Cassie's been sharing a lot of stuff on our Facebook page, and one of the things she shared was about not taking down the Christmas tree, which I love because I'm so lazy. I don't want to take it down anyway, and now I have an excuse. How was your Christmas, Cassie?
It was good. It was pretty low key. We actually didn't get to go to mass on Sunday because I just had surgery, and I'm not like on bed rest, but I wasn't supposed to be doing really much of anything for the first 2 weeks afterwards, which is going to be next Tuesday, and I didn't really listen. So I woke up on Sunday and I was in a lot of pain, and I was like, okay, I think I might have overdid it.
Yeah.
And so I was a little bit bummed that, it was better to kind of stay home and take it easy. But we, stayed home and we watched the Mass from the Vatican on EWTN.
Oh, cool.
On Monday. And we have been lighting the white candle in the center of the Advent wreath every day since then. And now we have our wise men traveling around our house.
Aww.
So the Epiphany when we get to What?
That's better than Elf on a Shelf.
Yeah, it definitely is. So, did you guys do anything special?
Oh, well, no, it was low key, which is great for me because that's totally my style. So low key, I have 5 siblings. So 3 of them came. So there were 4 of us and my mom, and then my kids and my husband. So it was like relatively speaking, it was a small gathering, but some people might think that's big. I don't know. But how are you feeling now?
I'm good. Better. I'm not in as much pain, but every now and then there's still like a little flash here and there.
Okay. Well, we'll say a prayer for you to fully recover.
Thank you.
So today we are going to talk about the new year that's coming up and just New Year's resolutions. We're not going to get too deeply theological. We just thought it'd be fun to talk about New Year's resolutions. Do you make them? Do you not make them? And if so, do you use any guidelines, or do you kind of just pick a couple and try to stick to them? Like, how serious are you about it? So we thought that would be a fun topic. Before we start, I thought it would be fun because I know people do watch these videos, but we don't always do a good job of engaging with you guys. So if, as you're watching this either live or later on, if you just want to write where you're from or say hi in the comments so that we can interact with you, that would be great. We would really appreciate that. And I also want to mention our Twitter that Cassie has been doing a great job of keeping up with lately. And the handle of our Twitter is @FidelisWomen. So we'd love to see you on Twitter as well. So Cassie, let's start off with the actual New Year's Day celebration. So you were mentioning that you found a resource about New Year's being a day of hospitality. Like most of us will have a party either on New Year's Eve or we'll do some kind of a celebration New Year's Day. I know with young kids, a lot of times our celebration, we don't really stay up late on New Year's Eve. We end up following our regular schedule. And then on New Year's, we do something fun that involves the kids. So what are your plans and what are the resources that you found that can help to incorporate our faith into that?
Well, we're kind of similar to you. We don't really do a whole lot for New Year's. Now that we have kids, because it's not like we're going to go anywhere and stay out super late. So I think this year we're going to a friend's house, and we may just sleep there, but it's not going to be anything super crazy. But I was trying to find ideas of things to do, because one thing that I try to put an effort into, not always successfully, but I try, is to build a good Catholic culture at home, because I don't want for my kids it to just be something like, oh, we go to Mass and I have to sit still and be quiet and I don't really understand what's going on, and that's what being Catholic is to me. I want it to be more, and I want them to see that there are fun things about being Catholic too, and things that are enjoyable. So I try to keep up with the liturgical calendar and come up with, ideas of things to do, like on the Feast of St. Lawrence, and so on, or their name days. And so obviously for New Year's, I decided, okay, well, let me look up and see if there's any kind of Catholic fun tradition things that I can do. And I found a link. I'll post it in the comments after the video. but it talks about some different things you can do. And the idea is that New Year's Day has been varying feast days and solemnities throughout Catholic history. Originally, it was the feast of the circumcision of our Lord, and then it changed to the Holy Name of Jesus. Right now, it is the solemnity of Mary, Mother of God. And the thing that all of these have had in common, though, is that it's usually seen as a day of hospitality. So traditionally, you would have an open house for your family and your friends, and they would come and, eat and spend time together, and you would do different things. One of them, which I love, is the blessing of the beer. I don't know why this became some kind of tradition, but apparently it is, and I love it. It's the most Catholic thing ever to bless beer.
Indeed.
So I actually am going to try to do that on New Year's Eve. I think that at our friend's house, I'm going to run it by them and see if they might be up for that. But, I think that sounds like kind of fun, and also like a great way to, party it up and still bring your faith into it.
Nice.
The other thing that I actually really like too is the renewal of baptismal promises. And I think that just fits in such a great way for the new year, that specifically, because what better way to start the new year than by renewing your baptismal promises, than by renewing your faith, in essence.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. I mean, practically speaking, people can do that in a number of ways. You can look up a renewal of baptismal promises, or you can pray the Apostles' Creed or the Nicene Creed, or you can do something like, since it is the Solemnity of Mary, Mother of God, the De Montfort consecration, I think incorporates a renewal of baptismal vows. So that would be a cool thing to look up as well, just to change it up a little bit. But yeah, I love that. We don't have New Year's plans quite yet, but I know we're going to end up doing something. My sister and brother-in-law will probably come over and we'll play cards and drink beer. And I think I'll pull out that beer blessing because I love that so much. I love being Catholic because hospitality and community and like actually enjoying life is not just an accepted, but like an encouraged part of our lifestyle. And it's just a great faith to be a part of in that sense. I want to kind of talk a little bit too about that. You mentioned the liturgical calendar. The United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, the USCCB, has a really great liturgical calendar. It's several pages where they go through like what all the dates are, just so you can get them on your calendar ahead of time for the holy days of obligation, the major feast days and celebrations in the church, like when Ash Wednesday starts and when Advent starts. So it's got all those important dates. And then it goes through which cycle of readings that will be happening for the year, the liturgical year, and like what the breviary readings are. So it's got a whole bunch of really good information, and it's just like condensed into one document. So I'll link to that as well. And I thought that was helpful when I was looking at it and trying to decide what my like spiritual goals should be for 2018. It was helpful to look at that just to kind of orient myself and try to align my goals with what's going to be going on in the church at large so that I'm acting kind of in accord with the community. So I'll post that link as well. And then the De Montfort consecration that I mentioned is a great resource to look at, not just for renewing baptismal vows, but building a relationship with Mary, if that's one of your goals in 2018. So I would love to invite people, if you have thought about your spiritual goals for 2018, if you would share them with us, because I know I'm still looking for ideas. I kind of want to make sure I go on retreat this year because I haven't really done that since my kids were born. I got out of the habit after college. So I definitely want to go on a retreat. And then I want to keep going to confession every 2 weeks because I finally made that a habit in 2017. And then I want to, no, I hate to say I will pray the rosary more often. But first I'm going to focus on getting a retreat on the calendar, doing some more spiritual reading every day. And then I will add in the goal of praying the rosary as often as I can. But I'll focus on the first two things first, so that it's like baby steps. Because if I go into 2018 with like a whole list of goals that have to start on January 1st, it's not going to be manageable.
Yeah. And I have some, like the goals that I have are similar. I want to make sure that I am also praying the rosary more often because I really don't pray it like ever. I console myself that I'm very like Saint Therese, like that I don't really like the rosary that much.
Right.
I mean, I do, but I don't. But that's one of my goals is to pray the rosary more often. I want to try to go to daily mass more often too. I'm setting my goal to be once a month. I would love to go more often than that, but realistically, that's just not going to happen. I have 3 kids that are all in school, and they all go to 3 different schools, and daily mass always tends to be fairly early in the morning, and so timing-wise, it's pretty difficult.
Yeah.
So if that's my goal is to try to do it. I think maybe I can swing once a month.
Yeah.
And adoration, I haven't gone to adoration as much as I would like to. So this year, I would like to increase the amount of time I spend in adoration and, hopefully bring my, at least my older kids, not the younger ones. But I think that when you go to adoration, you make it a point to spend time with Jesus. It really increases, your faith life and other areas too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. I try to stop in when I think about it, but I don't have it on like a schedule, and I can be really sporadic about it. So there could be like a month that I don't stop in at all, and then another month I stop in like every week or something. So yeah, that's a really good point. I was going to ask you something. Oh yeah, our mass schedule for daily mass at our church is cool because a lot of times a lot of churches in the area, at least, it's like mass is every day at 9, which is it's such a restricting time for everyone unless you're like retired, I guess. But
yes.
Like who can go to 9?
That's exactly the issue.
Yeah, but our church, we're lucky because I think they do have a couple of 9 a.m. masses, but they've got like a couple 6:30 a.m. masses or 6 a.m. and then they've got a couple like 7 p.m. So I think they do try to like make an effort so that everyone can go. There will be a mass for everyone like at least once a week, which I really appreciate because I know that's not super common.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is if I really wanted to, I live in a big city, and that's why this is part of my, resolutions, is that I can find a parish somewhere that offers daily mass that will fit in with my schedule. It's up to me to make that a priority. Mm-hmm. So I think that it's probably unrealistic to say, okay, well, I'm going to go every week or something. But I think that saying, okay, once a month, I can take the time to, go a little out of my way and go to daily mass. Mm-hmm. I think that that's realistic. And I think it's a good goal to make.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. Once a month. I mean, it's so easy to say, oh, I'm going to start doing this thing every single day. But then when it comes down to it, that becomes so overwhelming. And once a month definitely seems like a goal where, yeah, you're going to have to make an effort, but it's not going to be something that is impossible to do. So that's really smart.
Yeah. And I like what you said about going to confession more often. I tend to be pretty sporadic with it, like every now and then I'll go through little cycles where I'll go, every month or every couple of weeks, and then I won't go again for a few months because I'll just get busy and I won't make time for it. Mm-hmm. So I think that was a good idea too, your goal of going to confession on a regular basis.
Yeah, I just don't do well. I get super discombobulated when I spend a long time away from confession. And there's definitely been phases where I've had 3 months between a confession or something. And I just know that when I'm in that habit of going every 2 weeks or going regularly, whatever that schedule is, it just works so much better for me. Confession is one of those sacraments that I feel like I need all the time. So yeah, it was sort of easy for me to get in the habit in the sense that my life seems to go better. So there was that selfish motivation of like, I need this. So I was able to get myself in the habit of going.
Yeah. And I feel like it also helps me to kind of try harder because it's like I go to confession, I don't want to mess it up, you know? Right. So it's like I put in more of an effort if I go to confession on I don't want to make it sound like I don't put in an effort as it is, no, but yeah. Like you go to confession, you don't want to mess it up.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And when there's that, I know I'm going to go back in 2 weeks. It's not that it makes you think, oh, I can do whatever I want because I'm going to go back again soon. But you try to make that resolve from the last confession last as long as possible. And it really does help. And it makes me more aware of the little things that are tripping me up on a daily basis. So because I guess that my memory is lasting a little bit better when my confessions are closer together. So I'm not just confessing like the bigger things that are obvious problems, but I'm remembering a little better what the little things that got in the way were. And it's funny, it's like the more you go to confession, the more you realize all the problems you have. It's not like your problems start to go away, it's that you become more conscious of them. So it's very humbling.
Yeah, and one thing that helped a lot too is that I've started using apps. I always feel a little bit awkward, but no priest has ever said anything to me about it, so
I use
probably
them.
not a reason to. But and I remember the first time I used an app to go to confession, and like I was looking down the list for the examination of conscience, and I was like, wow, I would never even have thought of these things.
Yeah,
you know,
for sure.
That's
It's really helpful. I'm actually going to pull up, do you use the Laudate app?
Yes.
I'm going to pull it up and show people. So this app is free on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. And if you see the list, you can see, I don't know if I can get my finger to point to it, but there's confession right here where this like grading picture is. And if you click on it, it's got different confession apps on it, like sub apps. So there's confession for everyone, confession for children, confession for young adults, confession for singles, married people. And then it has like step-by-step instructions. So if it's been a really long time since you've gone, or maybe this is your first confession, you're just becoming Catholic, or you have kids that are going for the first time, there's step-by-step instructions on what to do. So you don't have to be nervous that you're going to botch, you know, your confession. Anyway, if you go in and you don't remember something, you don't need an app. The priest will walk you through it. I've never had a priest be like mean about it. So, but it's cool because if you click on confession for everyone, there's actually a checklist. I mean, I know there's probably people that will say that this is not the best way to do it, but I love it. I don't know if you can see it, but you can actually check it asks you questions like, have I done this? Have I done that? And you can check off the ones that you've done. And I know sometimes my list is kind of long. It's hard to remember everything. And so having an app is helpful, and it's good not to have it like written down on a piece of paper that I'm going to worry about somebody finding, because you can just start over again after that confession and it just wipes off the app. So it's a really helpful tool. And I never feel weird about using my app in church, because I know there's a lot of people that are like, you should not have your phone out in church. And I'm like, hey, it really helps me. And if it helps me with my spiritual life, then therefore it must be okay.
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, no one's ever said anything to me about it. You know, I've never, and I've whipped my phone out right there in the confessional, like in front of the priest, and been like, okay. And they, you know, no one's ever said anything. So I know the awkwardness for me is totally like all on my part.
Well, so I think people comment about it online. So I know there's people out there that think it's wrong. But,
yeah. There's all kinds of people that will sit there and, you know, like if you have your phone out in adoration, for example, they automatically assume, oh, well, they must be surfing Facebook. And it's like, you know, people, it's 2017. It's about to be 2018. You know, like that app right there. And again, we'll make sure to mention it in the comment. It has like the rosary, which is helpful for me. I know how to pray the rosary, but I don't always remember all the mysteries.
Yeah.
So that's helpful, because then I'll be like, okay, well, today is the joyful mysteries or the sorrowful mysteries. And I'll be able to remember specifically which ones are which. Or if I want to read the daily mass readings, that's on there. Or various prayers. I can go search in there, and there's all different kinds of prayers. And then there's apps for the divine office, you know, so I use that, you know, that's another resolution. I need to try to do that more. So yeah, if you see someone on their phone at church or in adoration or whatever, don't assume that they're just, you know, goofing around. There's Catholic things on your phones now.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it. And it's so cool because that app for the mass readings, I use it in mass because I'm definitely that person that's like checking out what everyone's wearing and like wanting my hair to look like that lady and stuff, you know, so I get totally distracted in mass, and keeping my nose in my phone has really, really helped me. And the mass readings are pulled up from the USCCB's website. So I feel like it's all legit, you know, if they're like partnering with the USCCB for this. So I love it. So that's the app. We'll link to it. I thought it would also be cool just to go through a few tips for goal setting just in general, but these can be applied to your spiritual goals or your personal, financial, relationship, whatever categories of goals that you set. But about 10 years ago, the director of an organization I worked for had everyone on staff read a Brian Tracy book. Brian Tracy is one of the self-improvement writers that's kind of well known. Like there's a few major self-improvement writers that a lot of people read. Brian Tracy's one of them. He's awesome, and he has a book called Goals. He has books called Focal Point and Eat That Frog. Eat That Frog is just about overcoming procrastination. But his book about goals has really detailed tips for discovering what your goals are and just tips on how to set goals in general. So 3 principles that he recommends that have really, really helped me, and so I wanted to share them, were to make goals positive, personal, and dated. So you want to start your goal with I will, not I want to do this or that, but not I will, but I am doing this by this date. So I am praying the rosary 3 times a day by January 31st. And then under that, so once you've got your goal positive, personal, and dated, you can write the steps that it's going to take to get there. So I need to pray the rosary once a week by this date, twice a week by this date, 3 times a week by this date. And he says there's no unrealistic goals, only unrealistic deadlines. So if you don't meet that goal by January 31st, don't change the goal. Just push the deadline back and then make your sub list again of baby steps to get to the goal. And I swear it's magic. Like this formula works. I've been using it for 10 years for goals, and there's something about it that psychologically just works. I think our brains require things to be broken down in baby steps so we can set these grand goals and have the confidence that we're going to reach them if we formulate them the right way, and then we take the baby steps to them. So I wanted to mention that because that's definitely the formula I'm going to be using for my spiritual goals. I haven't been good about making or keeping spiritual goals for the last couple of years. So I have achieved some other goals that I've set, but this year I really want to hone in and focus on those spiritual goals that I haven't done a good job of keeping. And I'm definitely going to use that formula to do it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm assuming you'll leave a link because I want to check that out.
Yeah, he actually has like an acquisition page where you have to put in your information to get his guide, but I did that and I have the guide, and so I'll just share the link directly to the guide so that you don't have to go through the process of doing the information acquisition. But if you do, it's worth it. I mean, a lot of the emails, he's trying to sell different packages that he offers and stuff, so a lot of it is selling, but there are emails that he sends out that are like PDFs explaining how to do better in goal setting, and those are really helpful. So it is good to subscribe if you want to, but I won't make you go through that process. I'll just put the link to the guide in the comments. Yeah,
because it really makes sense, like everything you said, because so often, even if it's not something spiritual, like this is actually technically a goal from last year, but I'm continuing it. So it's I guess a resolution. But my husband and I are going to be running the Gate River Run, which is a 15K in March. And this is my first time ever. So training for that and getting in better shape, that's a goal for both of us. Mm-hmm. And that's a really typical, everyone does that, not everyone, but a lot of people do that for New Year's, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to get in better shape. But it's like when it doesn't happen as quickly as you want it to, and not just getting in shape, any resolution, like say not praying the rosary as much, or if I'm not going to daily mass as much, whatever your resolutions are, it's like, well, if you don't reach them or you stop doing them, it's really easy for people to just become discouraged and give up and say, okay, well, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to do it. And I really like what you said about that, how instead of changing your goal, you change your deadline.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, he says there's no goals that are out of reach. I mean, and it sounds a little gimmicky, but some of the goals that I've set for myself, I really didn't think that they were things that I could do. But by following that formula and trying again, I mean, sometimes it took moving the deadline quite a few times, but I really was able to do some things that I thought I couldn't do. So it works. And I like the formula of the part of the reason that he has people make the goals positive, personal, and dated, because if you say like, I weigh X pounds by this date, in your mind, you're starting to visualize yourself at that weight. Instead of saying, I will weigh, or I want to weigh, or I wish I weighed, it kind of does something to trigger like the visualization. And that I have found is really helpful as well. So I don't know, for some reason it works.
No, I think it makes perfect sense. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another thing that, and I'm going to leave the link for this in the comments that, and I kind of touched on it a little bit, that I want to do is do more with a liturgical calendar each month. Moving forward, I have reminders in my phone for all of our baptism days and all of my kids' name days, because all of my kids, I've named them all after at least one saint. Mm-hmm. So I have their name days saved. I have their baptism days saved. My husband and I are the only ones that are old enough to have been confirmed. So I have our patron saints saved. Okay. And I try to remember to do special things on those days. And then in addition to that, if there's other like big days, like Saint Lawrence is one of my favorite saints. Mm-hmm. So in Italy, a big tradition for, the Feast of San Lorenzo is to eat pasta, and you don't eat it in a bowl or with silverware. You just throw it on the table and you just eat it with your hand. And stuff like that. It's so much fun. And it's also such a great way to remember, your faith in these saints and, whatever it may be. So, whether it's, like they said on New Year's Day, the Solemnity of Mary, the Mother of God, or the Feast of Saint Lawrence, or, your patron saint or your baptism day, my goal is to try to do more to celebrate these things and not forget, or, say, oh, well, I'm too busy and I don't feel like putting in the effort.
Yeah.
And I have a couple of books that, I plan to use. And one of them, it's called A Continual Feast, and it's a cookbook, and it has different ideas of food and drinks that you use for all through the liturgical calendar. And so I'll post that in the links for everyone to check out, because that has been helpful for me, because I've said in previous videos, I didn't grow up really with the Catholic culture in my house. Mm-hmm. So I'm having to kind of learn all of this as I go. And this book, one of the nice things is it says, oh, well, traditionally on, the Feast of St. Michael, you do this.
I love that.
So it doesn't have that for every single one, but it's a good like kind of guideline. And so that's kind of one of the things I'd like to do more of this coming year.
That's awesome. I'm not very good about keeping up with the saints' feast days and my kids' saint name days, but I like the idea of putting them in your phone, so at least you get reminded. And I like that you mentioned St. Lawrence. I did not know that tradition, but he's actually my patron saint. I love him because he had such a good sense of humor. Yeah. My middle name is Nicole, so St. Lawrence, who said, you can turn me over now, I'm done on this side, when they were grilling him to death. And then St. Nicholas is my other patron saint, who punched people for being heretics. And I'm like, that combination definitely fit my personality. So I love it. But I didn't even know that tradition. So I think that's a great book recommendation. And I love it when things, maybe this is just a quirk about me, but I love it when things are all in one place. I don't like having to Google every single time there's a saint day to celebrate, or every single time I need to do anything. I love it when things are compiled into one place. I actually asked a Catholic artist that I met on Facebook if she could please make a book of all the saint pictures that she has, because she's got them all, but they're like in random places on her website. And I was like, put them all in a book so that we can go through it like chronologically with our kids and just pull out like the saint of the day. And that way we don't have to do all this thinking and searching and finding, because they're beautiful pictures, but I am just way too lazy to like go online every single day and find the right one.
That would be a great idea. I would love that. I actually have a lot of books saved that are in, that kind of same vein as A Continuous Feast, but I just haven't bought them yet, and so that's why I don't want to like personally recommend them yet. Yeah. But there's a lot that I'm interested in. Like there's one, it's called The Catholic Home: Celebrations and Traditions for Holidays and Feast Days, but I haven't read it yet. Yeah. It's in my list of things to buy. So one day I'll check it out. Yeah. And I can kind of report back And but for right now, I have a continual feast, and that's what I'm I'm going to use it more.
Yeah.
I'm going to use it more this year.
Yeah, maybe throughout the year we can just check in a little bit about what Saints' Days are coming up and what we're planning to do to celebrate them, if anything, because that would be helpful. I know it would be helpful to me to stay on top of that better. A lot of times, I know for me, like these things roll around and I realize the day of what's happening, but things are just crazy, and it's really hard for me to like celebrate the feast day if I haven't planned it ahead of time. So, yeah, that would be very helpful.
Yes. Put it on your phone. I have an app. It's called Cozi, C-O-Z-I, and it's great because you can use it for all different things. My husband and I both have it, and you can link your accounts. So I can put things on a grocery list, and he gets it on his phone, for example. Cool. But in this regard, it has a calendar, and we can both put dates in there, and it will share them with both of us, and it has different color like dots. So if I go look on the calendar, like a blue dot are Matt's dates and orange ones are ones I've added. And you can set reminders and it will remind you whatever amount of time you say in advance. So like with our feast days or our name days or whatever, I think I have those set for a week in advance.
Okay.
So it'll remind you on your phone, both of you, not just one person, but both of us. It'll remind both of us.
Yeah. That way the other one can pick up the slack.
Yeah. It's really helpful. So that's what I use. I just have to be more mindful about when I get that reminder, at least for me personally, to actually do something about it and not just kind of put it off until the last day and then, oh man, I didn't plan anything. Oh, well.
Yeah. But then at the same time, I mean, not beating yourself up because you do have 5 kids. So that's a lot of name days and baptism anniversaries. And yeah, that would be a lot.
Yeah, the super young ones are too young to get it. So like the only ones that I want to make a huge deal out of it, are like Benjamin and my husband. Like for Ivy and Clara, they're really, really little. It's more like, okay, we'll have a cake on that day.
Yeah.
Just something so that it's special. And then as they get older, we can do bigger things.
I love that. That's awesome. I feel like I've gotten some really good tips for going forward with the spiritual goals for 2018. What about you?
Yeah, although one thing you had mentioned that the idea of New Year's and resolutions is very Catholic. Well, I mean, like, why would you say that?
Yeah, well, so the way I view this is because when we go to confession, which is a sacrament that the church extends to us like almost on demand. Like we can go to confession all the time. It's not something that we have to wait a whole year before we can go again or something. Part of going to confession, in order for the confession to even be valid, we have to make a resolution to not fall into the same patterns, to try not to commit those sins again. Now, there's sins that are habitual that we will probably commit our whole lives, or they'll take an extraordinary amount of effort to overcome, at which point we'll probably discover other sins that we weren't aware of before. But we do have to make the resolve. There is something spiritually powerful and required about making that resolution not to do this again. So when we walk out of the confessional, we truly do have a fresh start. And I think the church puts some stock into the psychological power, maybe you would say, of making the resolution and that strengthening you to really actually not do something again. And so whenever New Year's rolls around, I always feel like it's something that is very in line with church teaching to make these resolutions and to really root them, even if they're not our spiritual resolutions. I make resolutions in my relationships with people, financial, physical, and like personal / fun resolutions in addition to the relationship with God resolutions. But I feel like all of those can be rooted in what we feel God is calling us to do with our life, and the fact that we know that our final end is heaven and that everything we do should be working toward that end. So I feel like we can definitely make New Year's a very Catholic holiday. And then the church always puts these great feast days, like you mentioned, on January 1st, which kind of confirms that they do think it's important and that fresh start is something that they encourage us to be mindful of.
That definitely makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other comments that people have on New Year's and how they tie it into their Catholic faith? Love to hear them. I'm totally like a self-improvement nerd, so other book recommendations that you have are super welcome, whether they're from Catholic authors or not. I like to listen to them, and even if they're talking about like karma or universal energy or something, I just mentally translate that into God, and I'm like, oh yeah, I can take something from this, even though if it's not totally theologically kosher.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Definitely. So one thing I want to bring up before we sign off is, like last week we gave a couple of product recommendations. And so this week, what I want to mention, and I meant to bring it in here with me, and of course I forgot because that's just what I do, is the Vatican Cookbook. This is, and it's actually kind of in line with what we're talking about a little bit, sort of. But it's not, it doesn't have like traditions or anything like that. It's published by the Swiss Guard, and it makes a great like coffee table book. Even if you don't like to cook, it's beautiful. And it has all of these gorgeous pictures of the Vatican in it. And it has the favorite recipes of the past 3 popes. So Pope Francis, Pope Benedict, and Pope John XXII. And so when you look through their favorite recipes, you kind of get a sense of who they are and what they like. And, obviously, with Pope Francis, there's a lot of, Latin type of foods, but then you see there's some Italian foods too, probably from his time living in Rome. And then there's different recipes from various members of the Swiss Guard as well. And all of it is interspersed with all of these just gorgeous, gorgeous pictures of the Vatican itself. And I got it, and I have not made a single recipe in it. One day I will. But that can be another goal. But even without that, it's still just a gorgeous book to have. And I really highly recommend it for people, even if you're not a big cook, just to have kind of a bit of Catholic memorabilia, so to speak. That's something that, I want to recommend everyone go check out from this video.
Awesome. I'm definitely gonna get that eventually. And that would be so fun to use on John Paul II's feast day to make some of his favorite foods. I'm gonna pull my book down. It's up here. This is a book that I have reread at least twice this year. Oh, I'm sorry. It is called Subverted. I don't know if Cassie, have you read this already?
No, I have not.
Okay, so I'm super into learning about the feminist movement. This book by Sue Ellen Browder is called Subverted, How I Helped the Sexual Revolution Hijack the Women's Movement. Sue Ellen Browder was I'm trying to think if it was Cosmo or Glamour, but she was a journalist for one of those magazines back in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And she had basically a conversion to Catholicism, but not until after she had basically gone along with the sexual revolution, and she had an abortion after she had 2 children, and she just saw from the inside, really from like the belly of the beast, how the sexual revolution played out. And really interesting, she did a lot of research. She went like to DC and different libraries around the country to like really get into historical documents on how did the women's movement and the sexual revolution come together, because they didn't start as the same thing. So the women's movement started as a relatively good thing. And then the sexual revolution, which really is code for the abortion movement, hitched itself to that horse and convinced the leaders of the women's movement to make one of the planks of the women's movement, the right to abortion on demand. And having the women's movement behind the abortion movement is really what gave it the momentum to become as pervasive as it is today. And so I have actually gotten to know Sue Ellen. After I read the book, I was so excited that I tracked her down. And I haven't met her in person, but we've spoken on the phone a few times and we email occasionally. And she's just a phenomenal woman. She lives in California. Her husband passed away a few years ago, and she lives on the property of her parish. So she's
wow.
Yeah, she's a Roman Catholic, but one of the Eastern rites or practices, I really don't remember which one it is, but she lives like next door to her priest, and he gives her theology classes, and she spends a lot of time in prayer. But she has this incredible backstory where she was a journalist with a Glamour magazine for many years during the women's movement. And this is basically a combination of the history of what happened and how those two things came together, but it's also her autobiography. So she found a way to mesh those two things together. So it's really a page turner. Like, you're reading about this woman's incredible life, and then you're also learning all this history in the process. It's published by Ignatius Press, and I just highly recommend it. I don't know if it's because, you know, we work in the pro-life movement. As soon as I read it, I started it over again. Like, it was just something that I was like, where has this been my whole life? Because it filled in so many gaps and questions that I had about how did we get here. As someone that was born in the 80s, I didn't see all of this happen with my own eyes, and I'd never really seen an account of it that explained what happened. And so that's what she did, and it's very powerful. Highly recommend. We'll have to have her on sometime.
Great. It sounds great. I would love to. I'm going to add it to my list at Goodreads right now.
Yeah, it's really good. I've got it all marked up and highlighted, and it's so good. So yeah, that was a really good conversation. I feel like I got some good tools, and I definitely want to buy that cookbook.
Yeah, even if you can't cook, like I said, I have not cooked a single recipe in there just because I haven't gotten around to it. But even just looking at it and reading it and looking at the pictures, and you kind of get to know some of the members of the Swiss Guard, which is kind of fun. And in a sense, I mean, maybe it's just because I like to cook, but I feel like seeing the kinds of foods that people like to eat, it's like it's like you get a little window into who they are.
Oh, so, yeah.
And you get to do that with 3 popes, which, I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah, that's awesome. I just read John Paul II's biography, Witness to Hope. So now I really just want to buy that and like dig in more into it. I definitely think you get to know people by seeing what they eat. It's like when you're learning a language, you feel like you get to know that culture a little bit more. And it's very similar with food too. You really do get like some insights by knowing what people love. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that concludes our conversation for today, but do please comment. Tell us where you're from. Tell us what your resolutions are. We would love to interact with you. Follow us on Twitter at Fidelis Women, and Cassie will probably be the one to respond to you if you reach out to us, because she's doing a rockin' job monitoring that account. And thank you, Cassie, for doing that. You're doing a great job. And hopefully we're thinking about starting to do some interviews with other people coming up in the future. So we'll keep you posted on that. If there's any topic that you would like us to cover, or a person that you recommend that we should interview or speak to, please let us know. We would love to know what you think. All right. Have a great 2017. We will see you next year.